of your organization is. And again, if it's just you, the culture of yourself, what you embody, and what you would embody if you were to build a team around you, what would be your filters, the things that would govern kind of how things get done around your office. And so that's what I want you to think about. So I'm going to move us forward. I'm going to also employ a technology that some of you have used maybe before. It's called Poll Everywhere. And I'll give you the direction for it when we get to it. But it's a polling software that allows us to all participate electronically so that we can see what others are rating around some of the questions. And I do have a number of the next few slides that I'm going to use as sort of a gauge or a level set for us all to kind of see where we are. Not to worry if you are a technophobe or you don't want to, kind of deal with the technology here. I welcome the good old fashioned sort of hand raise and chime in. So again, I'll prompt that when we get to it. But you see this first question that's on the screen now, and hopefully it's kind of getting your tone set to kind of think about how your relationship has changed relative to how you govern, how your team lands on you, your impressions around that. And I want to get a little more specific with regard to the question. Do you feel more or less connected to your colleagues or team, or in the case of just you, your customers, your vendors, whomever you interface with in your ecosystem the most? How do you feel more or less sort of acquainted with them? And so here's where I will introduce the technology element. And there's a direction at the top of the slide that kind of gives you two ways to join. I prefer the second way, which is via text, SMS text. So if you would get your phone and actually open a blank or open text field and then type into the to field, that number that you see there, 22333, and then in the sort of body of the text, type in that DOBO 597 and then hit enter or send. It will bring you into this polling environment, and you'll stay there throughout the session to be able to participate in these polls. So let me give you all some time, those of you who want to do it that way, to do that. If you also want to do it via your computer, you can use the pollev.com and then just follow the prompts there. And again, I welcome the good old-fashioned hand raise. So let me sort of prompt this question then, now that kind of all, I think, in here, and hopefully we'll see some people start to pop up in terms of their answering this question. Do you feel more or less connected to your team than you did 30 months ago? And so okay, we got some people starting to chime in. We'll give that some time. And while we're doing that, if there's anyone who, again, is not in the technology and just wants to raise their hand and give a sense of how this has been. The reason you see me looking up is I have another screen here, which will let me see everyone in the room here. And hands raised if there are any. So I know it's not 100% more. That's probably just a function of the small number of folks who participated. But let me present the question to the room here. And again, I'm looking for hands and or anyone who's chimed in here. Let's do more for the moment, since there are more people kind of that are chiming in for more. Anyone who has experienced more connectivity to their team than there was prior. Let me hear from you, please. Unmute yourself and let me just hear kind of how you noticed it, kind of what's driven that for you in what you do. Sherry, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm the director of my own counseling agency, and I definitely feel more connected than I did at the beginning of 2020. Experiencing everything we did with the pandemic actually pushed me to run my agency full time and to leave my position I had with the state of Michigan to actually do this full time. I do have other therapists who work at my agency too, and we definitely, I think, connected more and grew closer.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you again, Sherry, for sharing that. That's good. So yours was more a function of your own sort of committing more of your own time, given that you left the shoulder in order to do that, and that drove some connectedness. And it also sounded like there was an element of just you being proximal to the people that you were working with that kind of drove that. Let me hear from either someone else who had an experience of more or less. I'm curious to kind of get the other side of it as well.
I'm Dr. Ural Hill, and I too have a counseling agency, and I do feel more connected to my colleagues and teams than I did before the pandemic, because before the pandemic, the world was not as tech savvy. I think the pandemic forced everyone to become more tech savvy. So even though I raised my hand here, but we do more Zoom sessions, we talk more, we connect more. My board of directors, we began to use Zoom in terms of, rather than wait until the quarterly meetings to see each other face to face, we were doing FaceTime and all those things. And even with my clients, not only my colleagues, so nationally, we're communicating more. And then locally, now we're in the clients' homes through telehealth. So I feel more connected to my clients than ever before, because now I see them in their environment.
Right.
Okay, so more.
Yeah, that's great, Dr. Yob, and I definitely have heard that story of folks feeling sort of more. And it's kind of weird. At the beginning, had folks asked us all to predict whether or not this was going to make people closer or further from their teams. And I know there are cases where there are certainly people who feel further away. You probably wouldn't have gotten as many people to kind of confess or feel that they would be closer for the reasons that both you and Sherry have outlined. And I'm sure that there are many others. Let me just for a moment, let me hear from someone who feels less connected or maybe there's no difference. I want to kind of get a sense of what that experience has been like.
I'll go. This is Deborah with our Fabric Stash.
Hey, Deborah.
I would say, hi, how are you? Mine has been pretty much the same, no difference, because I do have a small team and we're pretty close knit. And so the difference for us was we were still close, but when we were working during the COVID, it was more remote. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of communication, that way it was sending lists to take product, whatever they needed, to their homes. So it made us actually a little bit more distance during that period. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, there's been no change. It's been the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you again thanks for sharing that. That's probably one that you wouldn't hear as much. Again, I'd be curious. I have spoken to a lot of people during this period, and I don't hear a lot of people say it hasn't changed, but it's interesting when I do hear that, and I'm always interested to kind of hear about the circumstance that kind of has driven that. But the point of the question really is to just kind of think about how technology has sort of lowered the threshold of engagement in a lot of realms in terms of just frictionless connectivity. I mean, I think it was Dr. Hill that was saying they're meeting more because they wouldn't wait to the quarterly meeting. It's so easy to do it now. But those are important elements, and it's important to think about what other elements, aside from the technological ones, that are driving or have driven your feeling of connectedness and engagement with the work and the team that you've been involved with over this last 30 months. And that's what the key to this is, really. And so let me shift us to think about another dimension of this. Just broadly, your challenges, things that you have that you experienced today, not throughout the pandemic. We've all had tons of challenges throughout, but that have gotten you to where you are right now. What elements today are striking you and your business as your biggest challenge? And we'll use the same technology. This is free form, so you don't have to do anything. Go back into your text field and just in the body, just free form it. Or again, good old fashioned hand raise. I'd love to just kind of allow this to set the tone for kind of how we move forward as well, just in terms of what some of the biggest challenges are that you're seeing. Jim, yes, sir.
Well, I run a small business. We do pressure washing, graffiti removal, and things like that. My biggest challenge is I'm trying to move away from subcontracting with national companies to just acquiring contracts myself. My biggest challenge is reading through some of the contracts. I had one job that I was going to bid on, and I think the bid is due early next month, but it's 690 something pages.
Right.
And of course, all of it doesn't apply to the work that I'm going to do, but just getting through it, and then some of the definitions and that are contained in some of the contracts, it can be a little scary. I've done a couple, and I've come out okay, but it is a risk. You're reading through those contracts and just signing your name unless you really know what you're doing, what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a real one. I mean, I often will get sort of unique situations relative to folks who do a lot of contract work. Did I hear you say, Jim, that this is sort of you wouldn't normally be doing this type of kind of contracting? This is sort of a new element, or is it something that you have done years past?
Well, it's a new element right now, because in the past I was able to subcontract from some other companies. We were doing Home Depots and Lowe's stores, mm-hmm. and Barnes and Nobles, and they had the contract to do the stores, and I subcontracted from them. Mm-hmm. But once I became certified as a minority-owned business,
right,
then I was able to go after some other stuff, and I was contacted by some contractors that are doing work on I-5 removing graffiti.
Yeah.
So I was able to get in the door with them, and it's so good. I really love the work. And I like being able to do this, but I'd like to be able to do it for myself and not subcontracting other other companies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Jim, I'm gonna move us on, but I'd be interested in just kind of hearing and maybe speaking with you about some of the other stuff that could be some ways to find the balance between your day-to-day, which is what the challenge is, right? You got to work day-to-day. You can't spend all day reading 600-page, proposals. So figuring out a way to kind of leverage and use sort of your ecosystem in order to find a balance for you to be able to grow your business, but also while you're still able to do your business, since it's just kind of you doing this at the moment. I'm seeing this running list of challenges, which again, you will see the list here. I'm sure there are things that folks can relate to. There are things, a number of them I'm seeing that are going to be addressed or have been addressed during your engagement with ICCC, which is why I love the initiative so much. But let me move us forward again. I wanted you to kind of see those. We're going to address some of those in kind as we move here. Here's one to think about in terms of your own current readiness or capacity, and this is for you personally as the leader, owner of the business that you're in, and the capacity of your capacity to harness or leverage that of your team, the folks that you work with in order to get the work done. So good. I'm glad to hear that at least there's good. This is great. I'm glad that you guys are at the top half of this, at least at this point. So again, rhetorical question, think about where you are relative to this. Again, this is a prompt for kind of how you think about how we move forward and engage in where we are here. Let me move us forward. There's a couple more of these, and then we'll move into the first framework here. What percentage of your workforce, your employees, if you have them, have churned or turned over, have left your organization? And then this is just for the last 8 months or so. I'm curious to know about this and maybe an idea of why that's happening, if it's happening at all. This will be the last one here. This is the free form for that question. I'm just curious to know what churn is like. Folks are kind of gotten through that, or are you still seeing fantastic zero? Yeah, that's good. Others? Okay, good. Hopefully those numbers are staying small. Great, that's another zero. This is good. So let me now move us on to this first kind of frame that I want us to think about as we begin to think about the questions that we need to ask and the things that we need to motivate within our teams in order to achieve the objectives that we're looking to achieve. The first I want to tee up is one that is by Patrick Lencioni, who is an author that I often will quote in my presentations. He's written a number of very nice, concise books on leadership and functionality within teams. And he has this one framework that's based on functionality and dysfunctionality within teams. And what it does is it identifies five domains, if you will, five dimensions or functions that drive functionality, either high functionality or low functionality within teams. And so here they are. And again, I'm not going to go into the detail of the flanks because I want you to come back to this, but I do want to highlight essentially what the dimensions are so that you know what those are. The first is results, and that shouldn't be surprising. You know, how teams sort of manage and interact around the provision and generation of results determines whether or not they function highly as a team or function dysfunctionally as a team. Likewise, accountability and how you define and manage that. The third dimension is commitment. And as you know, there are a number of things that come out of the capacity to commit and folks' feelings of commitment within teams and organizations with which they affiliate. The fourth is conflict. That's another one that should be obvious. You know, teams either function well, and by teams, think of your families. Same culture and dynamic that drives, functionality and relations on work teams as in family teams and other teams. So conflict is huge. And then finally, trust. So those are sort of the five dimensions that I would encourage you, at least as a first frame, to think about how first you interpret them, how you intend for folks with whom you engage to interpret and use these, and just think about past scenarios in which you've been engaged with your team or other teams that define where you are on each side. So I think I saw Dr. Hill's hand up again.
Yeah.
Did I see your hand, Dr. Hill?
Yes, I had a turnover. I had a board turnover last year, and then I had a smaller board, and I had some churning in that board too. And it was a working board. I mean, we actually wrote a book together this year, but I got to a certain point and I ran into a few of these. Well, with the first board, it was a conflict piece. And and people, sometimes you can, what did Dr. King called it? The paralysis of analysis.
Analysis,
yeah. Yeah, paralysis, right. So we were arguing over details of board operations versus what was actually going on with the business. And that got into a power struggle, and then I lost like half my board. And then it morphed into a board that was very functional and went to work. And then we got to the point, we did a lot of good work, but then we got to the accountability with one board member that we lost. Everybody else was working, but I couldn't get that one guy to work. And so I've experienced a couple of these things, avoidance of accountability and conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for those real world connections to this. I'm sure others can kind of think of places where they've either been on rail or derailed relative to this. But the point of this I want folks to think about is kind of directionally where you need to kind of focus in terms of, are you more on the left side of this for more of these or on the right side of this, and thinking about kind of how you move forward. So I'm going to give you some really clear guidance for that as we move into the next few frames here. What I want to start with, though, is the basics. Now, the good news is that earlier in the week, you've had sessions on strategy and marketing, so I don't have to go deep on this. You conceptually understand what strategy is, and I think you're going to have a clearer understanding of what culture is when we're at the end of this. But these are two very, very critical elements that are fundamental elements of building for any, again, team functioning organization that with which you will affiliate. So, let me break each one of these down kind of independently and give you a sense of how I kind of think about them. And I think visually they will help, kind of lay the frame for how we think about culture and then how we use these two levers to drive our objectives. So the first idea, and again, I hope this came out of your sessions earlier in the week, or at least you can easily distill what I'm about to say from what you've heard, is that strategy is no more than a simple decision or set of decisions about what you do and do not do. That's it. So it's about what we've decided to do and not do. And ideally, and the not do part is probably more important than the do part. You can do or say you do everything. If you, by the way, if you run into anybody that ever says that they do everything, then run, because that's, they don't, and it's a horrible strategy. You want to be clear about what you do and what you don't do. So that's a key element of this. I like the visual of thinking about strategy as, in a sports analogy, is sort of like the offense for the team. So that's what advances the ball forward and the team forward, as opposed to culture, which I'm going to get to in a moment, is about the operating system, or about sort of the defensive position. It sort of keeps things at bay and from going too wrong. So I like that visual as well. Also, this idea of strategy being sort of a program running on an operating system of strategy. You sort of, if you're thinking about a computer deck, and again, all these are really helpful visuals to think about kind of how these two, strategy and culture, interplay within an organization, and frankly, how they are the most critical levers, I think, for any leader owner to understand and be able to manipulate for the good of their business and their operation. So let me do the same with culture, because this, I think, is the key element here. The simplest way to put culture in here we talk about is how things get done right around here. The simple sort of rules of the game that govern, what's allowed and what's not. Things that keep you from getting voted off the island, if you will, or the guidelines that sort of govern culture. I like the takeaway here is that it is the most critical element that you need to manage, and the knowledge that it happens whether you manage it or not. So I'll get to that, but culture is the type of thing that is going to take place. And the question is the culture that is formulating in and around the work that you've set out to do one that is deliberate or one that is by chance? And there are a lot of cultures that come about by chance, and not all of them are terrible, but some of them are terrible. But it's much better to be deliberate about culture than to let it be sort of a by chance occurrence. So let's just take one moment here on this slide to just kind of just parse culture out into sort of the three elements that you hear people talk about it in and around. Again, just for clarity, the first is this idea of culture being beliefs, sort of assumptions, things that you understand or you believe to be true about, what governs, as they're saying here, success, failure, good, bad, up, down in your company. That's the first piece. The second piece, the values. Now, values are essentially sets of beliefs. That's it. So just groups of those that sort of govern how the organization moves around its mission, service, everything, the environment, everything with which it interfaces. And then this third piece is about the norms. And this is the sort of easier part that people think about, the unwritten rules of the game, if you will, that I mentioned. So these are the three elements of culture that really govern every interaction that happens. And I love to quote Peter Drucker here, because Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's another wonderful visual, because it just underscores the high level of impact that culture has in and around any team, even over a wonderful award-winning strategy. And there are a number of examples out there that I will not go into that are corporate examples that are well known, where companies have been wildly profitable or really setting about what their mission is, if you will, but the culture around the organization is really toxic, and that can happen if you're not careful and you're not governing this. So that's why I think this is important. And so let me ask this, and again, I'd love to hear folks just briefly chime in, because I want to move us forward. But if you've noticed your culture over this period of time, or you're noticing it now more than maybe you have, do you think it has changed? The culture itself. You know, we started about talking about your interactions with people, but the actual, the nucleus of what drives your organization, has that changed at all during the last 30 months? And good. So we're saying not really, pretty much remain the same. Okay, 50-50 there. Yes, by choice. Okay, I definitely want to hear from one or two people here that are either in this, yes, it's changed because they've done some things actively to change it, and I'd love to briefly hear that, and or you know, it's maybe it's not changed. I'd love to hear from anyone. I'm really curious about the folks where it has changed, and maybe what they've noticed about what's driven that. So let me hear from somebody in this.
Hello, right. I'm Juan Manzanares of JC's Painting and More in the Seattle, Washington area. And I responded with C, not really changing. Things pretty much seem to be on an even keel, so to speak, before, during, and even now, since the pandemic started. Although at the very beginning, I noticed a stoppage to work, for 30 days, where I was actually almost concerned about, do I need to change something? But I left things as they were, and after 30 days, it all picked up again, and I've been business has gone crazy since then in my line of work, because people are sitting around the house thinking of things to do.
Yeah. Good for you, Juan. I tell you, I was on the bad end of that. But yeah, so a number of things you said, I think they're interesting. One, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with the fact that, I mean, you can't, technology didn't disrupt your business from the standpoint that it might have in others. I mean, you can't paint virtually. I mean, so you got probably less of an impact there after that stoppage that you described. But yeah, the other dynamic you described, I'm sure others are related to as well, is just the drive and demand from that came to you. So kudos to you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been very lucky.
Yeah, that's great.
If I was in a restaurant business, I might not be sitting here telling you the same thing.
Yeah,
restaurants took a big hit.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a little personal experience with that as well, unfortunately. Although, yeah, I won't get into it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, it's real. Let me move us forward here again in the interest of time here. I just want you guys to kind of see some of that. But here's the takeaway. Here's the important thing to appreciate, and it's that this is a unique opportunity, obviously, for a lot of reasons that we described in our own experience. But the uniqueness of the opportunity presents another opportunity, and that's an opportunity to really, first of all, assess and realize what's going on within your organization, and really take some time to do that, which I think people have been forced to do, to realign yourself and, to the extent necessary, how you do business. And I'm sure some folks have been forced into some different ways of doing business and interacting than they were used to, but you had to do it. You had to be agile in order to survive. So that's the realignment part. And then sort of hitting the reset button for kind of getting back into what it is that sort of is your objective.
This guy's good from Harvard.
To the extent
Harvard
that
Business School.
may have needed to change, and maybe it didn't. But certainly how you approach the achievement of those objectives have changed in a lot of sectors. And so thinking about, deliberately, what team do I need to assemble? What capacity do I need? Capability, competencies do I need in order to achieve this new, redefined, realigned set of objectives that I've been super clear about? And so that's where the opportunity is, and that's where I want folks to sort of embrace as we move forward. So how does it start, right? So now I'm going to start to move us into some really practical, tactical blocking and tackling, some things you can do tomorrow morning to kind of begin to think about and answer and ask yourself and your teams and people with whom you might want to bring on to become part of your team before they are part of your team, in order to help you to clarify this objective and how you're going to do it. So it all starts, in essence, with these 4 questions. And these are 4 questions I've been talking to ICCC cohorts about for, 5 to 7 years. And it's all about this human capital strategy management process, which is a whole nother topic. But the takeaway here are these 4 key questions about essentially, what are your current sort of needs, as we've talked about, to sort of meet your mission or your objectives, and being super clear about that. And by needs, I mean your talent needs, your human capital capacity needs. 2, what do you have? What are you offering in order to make people want to engage with you? And this has changed a lot. I mean, people talk about money and compensation, there's benefits, there's all sorts of things. And the last 30 months have really clarified that for a lot of people, or made people be really clear about what this offer is. And people have made some changes about that as a result. So 3, what are you doing to kind of engage, to listen to continue to hear from your key players and make sure that they don't disengage for reasons that, have driven a lot of people to move from point 2 there. And then sort of this 4th one, which I always love, which is how do you continue to grow and develop, and then most importantly, deploy the team, the people, the capacity that you've built in your organization. And the idea is to have a high, HROIC. So high return on your human capital, is what the objective is. And so you want to maximize that in the same way you would maximize those returns from your financial capital perspective. So that's the idea. And then there are a number of other questions that you should literally sit with either a yellow notepad or an iPad and answer for yourself and for your teams as appropriately. And this is an opportunity to bring engagement, if you do have a team, into this conversation, which in turn will drive more of their own personal engagement around this. And so here's some of the questions. Again, I won't go into each one of these because you can read them, but I would encourage you to take these literally and come up with a written answer to each one of these for yourself. And there are others that you will think of that will be prompted by this that you should do as well. That will help you to move this forward. Now, here's another set of questions that are really solid questions for folks who are your current or potential employees. Now, these, again, another opportunity to engage your existing team, but these are questions that you want to use or you want to be able to answer pretty quickly if you are asked when you're in an interview setting or where you're dealing with a vendor or a customer or some other person in your ecosystem with whom you need to engage regularly. And so really thinking about, what these answers are, or what you want the answers to be. That is as important as what the answers currently are, for you sitting and really understanding where the gap is between what the answer is if you were to ask your team these questions and what the answers you hope to be at some point in the future, and really thinking about how to bridge that gap. So again, I mentioned earlier that there's a tremendous opportunity here, and I want to reiterate that. I also mentioned earlier that there's no choice in an action here. You're going to do something relative to your culture. Even if that something is nothing, that's an action in this case. And so thinking about, in essence, where you are and what your choices are, and appreciating the fact that, you can do nothing and have things kind of continue, and you may be fine. You can be very active and intentional about maintaining what you've always had, sort of the sort of 2020 BC timeframe, which could be a noble cause. I mean, there's no judgment around what your objective and your strategy is around this approach, or taking the opportunity to really, as you said, level set and reset. Let me introduce 3 other ideas, or one idea that's linked by sort of 3 components that I think are really interesting in this moment. And they came from, I've referenced it here, this document called the Workforce Strategies for Post-COVID Recovery that was put out by Deloitte some time ago. And it really talks about 3 components that make up the DNA of any well-functioning sort of team. And the first is its purpose and being really clear and defined around what its purpose is. The second I will get to is its potential. And the third is its perspective. So the first is the purpose. And so how you define what the purpose is. So here it is in its simplest form. Purpose for your team and organization. And this is where you need to be super clear as the leader owner when you're in conversations with folks that are in your organization and individuals who you're considering bringing in. And so it's well-meaning work which harnesses the collective organizational capacity towards service of a common goal. So that's pretty general, pretty broad, pretty easy to understand. That's purpose. The second, potential. Now, potential is about harnessing and leveraging the human capital capacity that you have in order to have success long-term in the work that you do. And it's about their creativity, their agility, their capacity to think and grow that really drive the potential here, the maximal potential here. So being clear about assessing that and understanding where that is. And this third element of perspective I really like because it speaks to the mindset, and mindset is so important here. And it's this idea that uncertainty, challenges, things that are unknown ahead, present opportunities for growth and development and prosperity in ways more than they do threats, and you sort of posturing yourself around that. And so these three components of clarity of purpose, clarity and understanding of your potential, and then this mindset or perspective of opportunities ahead and being able to be agile around that is presenting that. And I know a number of you have felt that already. I think are the key building blocks to what the DNA is of these high functioning organizations. So I'm going to take a breather here, and I'm going to send you all into a breakout, and it's going to be a fairly short breakout. And so let me give you the instruction around it before I send you there. We're going to do a 10-minute breakout. What I'd love for you to do is spend the first 2 minutes of that 10 minutes quietly thinking through these three prompts that are on your screen now about what your purpose is. Secondly, what do you want people to say they join your organization for? Why are they joining you? Like sort of the attributes, the reasons they join. Now, there's not a lot of time here to do that. So I want you to kind of put those two. I should sort of rearrange this because the most important one in this moment is the third one. I want you to think about and describe your organizational or team culture in either 3 words or 3 phrases. Okay, so that's really what I want you to do. So I want you to go into these groups. I want you to be quiet for 2 minutes. Think about these 3 prompts. Focus most of your time and attention on the third one because I want you to report that out and be able to share that with the folks in your group during the 8 minutes before coming back here, and then we'll report out a little bit on that because I want to hear about that. So off you go. I'll see you back here in about 10 minutes at about 2 o'clock, a little past 2. All right.
You got the other 2 questions.
Question number 3, he said, is the most important. 1 was, what's your purpose? Number 2, I didn't get. Number 3 is most important. It says, describe your organization or team culture or the one you're striving for in 3 words or phrases.
Hello. How you doing?
Hello.
How's it going?
Pretty good yourself.
I'm good. Good.
Yeah.
So what's our purpose?
I'm still on my 2 minutes.
You on your 2?
He said take 2 minutes.
Oh, take 2 minutes. I'm sorry.
Question.
That's okay.
Okay.
Here's the question. Here.
Okay.
Describe your organization or team culture or what you're striving for in 3 words or phrases.
That's the third question.
He said that's the most important question, so I think you should have the answer.
Okay. Describe your organizational team culture.
Or the one you're striving for.
Okay.
In 3 words or phrases.
Okay.
And then what's your purpose? And the second one I didn't jot down. I missed it.
Okay. Our purpose is to provide quality counseling and psychological services to at-risk males and families. And 3, describe your organizational team culture. It's Afrocentric.
Are you limiting yourself to just Afrocentric or?
I'm just saying what it is.
Okay.
Afrocentric. It is Christian. It is professional. It's mission driven. Mission driven. It's the family academic village. And church. It's a moral imperative. What would you say it is? Because I'm talking about me, you, Moses, Dr. Harrington, Eugene, and William Means.
Okay.
And say John. All right, I'm saying, you know, we wrote our purpose in Hotep Christian and Hillman Associates, but you know, I'm headed to Egypt right now. We got pastors and educators and professionals,
writers.
You know, the HBCUs had a lot to do with our cultural formation. All of us came out of the HBCUs, and so it's like a similar type of mission focus to uplift African American families and cultural journey for community assessment. Okay, that's what you did this morning.
Well, that's what's going on now.
Oh, okay. So you're doing something else.
No,
Oh.
I'm not doing it now. I just happened to tab
Okay,
across that word, culture.
Yeah, but okay. But our purpose, remember we wrote our purpose was to provide mental health and community mental health services to at-risk African American males and their families. And so anyway, so I'll open it up. Hello, my sister, how are you?
Oh, fine, and you? How are you today?
Great, great. So they have us in a group, the two of us again. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Cool. Okay.
We got 3 other people too.
Oh, there's 3 other people. I can't see the others. Let me see.
Yeah,
there they are. Oh, I see them. Okay. All right. All right. Well, we have 10 minutes. Everybody get their 2 minutes in. Can somebody I went to put on a shirt. What was the second question?
It says, why do you want people to say they joined your organization or team?
Okay. All right. You want to facilitate, Sister Boone? You want to facilitate this today? The next eight minutes? Go ahead.
I can do that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Well, would you like to start?
No. Oh, okay. I'll start. I'll start. Our purpose.
Okay, go ahead, Rhonda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Start. So I would like people to say they joined my organization because I was a great employer. Not only did I provide value, but I provided opportunity, and my work environment was such that
people want to join
to learning and motivating, and we added value to each other.
That's what she said.
Okay.
Very good. What would you say your purpose? What's your purpose?
My purpose is, that was the first question.
What's that? I didn't hear.
So my purpose is to provide a service that will be life changing to the individuals that are impacted by by the service that I provide.
And then the last question was, describe your culture.
So, so I'm a family-owned business and small business, and my current culture is we kind of have a do whatever it takes to get it done. And so it's one that I'm working very, very hard to change, just because oftentimes my experience has been that sometimes we are putting round pegs in a square hole. And so sometimes we're trying to make something, and so that kind of creates a little,
I'm
sorry, say that again.
Chili?
Sure. Oh, you guys are not on mute, Dr. Hill.
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry. Mute us, baby.
So yes. So that kind of creates some the word is escaping me, but it's just sometimes it gets a little bit chaotic, and it makes me as the president really frustrated. But the reality of it is that I'm asking somebody to do something that they may not have the full capacity to do, and so that becomes very frustrating. So so that's what I would say about my culture. So
okay,
and that's my error, because I'm expecting people to get in and just make things work, and sometimes that doesn't always work.
Yeah, I understand. Let's see, who else do we have here? Marcus, or is it Lona? Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and go, Rhonda. Let's see. What's my purpose? Well, I have a fabric business, and our goal is to keep fabric and textiles and craft related items, so the raw goods, from going to the waste stream. And so that would be one of the main ones. But then also too, another aspect of the business is education, so that we don't lose skills from one generation to the next. And then the third is there's a give back, and it's bringing awareness to social causes through either sewing or crafting. And so that would be the three main purposes of the business, but it's to offer it one, through a service, and then the product itself of what we're selling. Why do you want people to say they're joined the organization? I would say man, our breakout room is closing real.
Oh, so
I
they
knew
don't
it.
give you enough
Yeah,
time.
folks are coming back in.
Yeah, I knew it. She
Perfect.
facilitated. I
So
was
I am
she kind of slow
anxious to
moving,
hear about some of the
but I
ways that
talked
folks have described their
early on to him
their
directly
organization.
twice.
So
So I was trying to give it to somebody else.
let's look at this. So again, folks, raise your hand.
I know what you're
Drop
saying,
your
'cause
phone,
you can
read
end
the
up
document here,
dominating.
post
Oh yeah, and
it.
then
Everything.
when
Hear
it's over,
a couple of the
whether they
three
had something to say, I'm not gonna
three
see.
phrases that people have kind of
I had
come
something
to
to say.
describe to, or if you struggle with that and you were able to more easily come up with your purpose or the reason you want people to work with